Love, love, until I feel the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Welcome. You're watching Spirit of Life, and today we're speaking with Tina Sleeman. And she's the chairperson of the Church Council for the Uniting Church, Ferntree Gully. Thanks for coming in, Tina.
You're welcome.
Uniting Church, that's a relatively new church. How did it come about?
It's an amalgamation of three churches, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church and the Congregational Church. Mm-hmm. It was formed, officially coming together in 1977 and the churches are seeking to cooperate and become one church where we were not united, we were formed as the Uniting Church. Right. So it's ongoing.
Right.
I think the ideal would be that all churches could come together as one, yes. That we didn't need denominations. It's a work in progress and it takes time for people to accept change, and in the amalgamation of those three churches it took time, one, to make the basis of union, yes. The statement of our unification, yes. But also it says that in that basis of union that we are a pilgrim people. We are on the way. We haven't arrived, we're journeying together. Okay. So that difficulties of compromising, accepting new ways of doing things has been going on over the years. And yes, there were a lot of difficulties to start with when, with amalgamation, some churches closed and a common site was chosen. In others, a new church was built. I think coming to new ground was easier for some, yes. But others, in my case at Ferntree Gully, at Union, the time of Union in 77, the Presbyterian and the Ferntree Gully, the Methodist churches had united. Right. Because we were sharing. We had a Methodist church and we had a Presbyterian church, but the adult worship was at the Presbyterian church and Sunday school was at the Methodist church, and occasionally all worship would be at the Methodist church. So that when I first came to Ferntree Gully after my marriage in 1968, when we first went to the Methodist church, we thought there happened to be a service of adult worship there, and I think it was near Christmas. Yes. And then we didn't realise that they were worshipping around at Presbyterian, and we thought, what's happening? There's no church. Yes. And then when my children came from 71 on, I started teaching Sunday school. And people, when we had a combined service and took the Sunday school over to the Presbyterian church, people would say, "Oh, are you new to the church, Tina?" Yes. And I thought, "I'm teaching your children, you should know me." But then with Union, yes. We sold the Presbyterian church because it did have limited viability, usefulness. It was looked a bit like a football stadium, club rooms, yes. But very utilitarian. Yes. And we moved into the Methodist church, which was even older, but then we did a refurbishment and an extension, and we're still there.
That's thanks for that. This whole idea of pilgrims, that's an interesting, and the openness of that, the potentiality for growth. You're illustrating lots of interfacing. There must have been some problems with that? What were the major sort of issues that you encountered?
The Presbyterian way of doing things, the Methodist way of doing things, and the Congregational way of doing things.
They were different.
Yes, the Methodist hymn book, the Presbyterian hymn book,
Okay.
there is now, that went to an Australian hymn book, which was a combination of the different hymn sources.
Yes.
And now we have the Together in Song, which is got more modern songs as well as some of the old, and there are a lot of differences in what went in it and what was acceptable. The old hymns to the new, and
Right.
I remember doing a worship service at a nursing home in Ferntree Gully, and one of the hymns I'd chosen, one of the residents said, "Oh, is it nice to have a modern hymn?" And I think it was composed in about the 1800s. And I thought, oh, I wonder if she was Presbyterian. My bias showing.
Yes.
Couldn't have been Methodist.
That's right. So there were, and that's an interesting level for the differences to be. Yes, absolutely.
Just one example.
Yes.
But liturgies have evolved and changed, and churches. Sometimes it seems traditional, and back when I was young, but there's much more variety in liturgy and its acceptance. It doesn't have to be just one way. Right. I am also, apart from being chairperson of the Church Council, I'm also a worship leader, because our congregation is a lay ministry congregation. Right. We, up until the end of last year, we had a resource minister who was with us for 11 years, and he has moved on to another uniting church.
Talking about moving on, we'll take a break before we move on.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Spirit of Life, and today we're talking to Tina Sleeman. She's the chairperson of the Church Council for the Uniting Church, Ferntree Gully. Before the break, we were addressing some of the issues which confronted that fairly brave uniting of those three religions. And you were talking about it being a lay ministry at your church now. Does that mean you don't have a minister operating?
At the moment, we have a minister come to the church once a month to lead the service and conduct communion. And the rest of the month, each Sunday, lay people lead the service. And we have a worship team that consists of 4 people, 1 accredited lay preacher and 3 willing participants, of which I'm one.
You're one, yes.
How that came into being was over time our numbers have decreased, and we could not afford to employ or pay the stewardship of a minister of the word full time. So we joined with 2 other churches, the Bayswater Uniting Church and the Scoresby Uniting Church, to form a cluster where we shared ministers of the word. Bayswater is slightly bigger than the other 2, and they had a half-time minister, and we, Scoresby and Ferntree Gully, shared a minister on half-time employment as well.
Right.
2 different ministers.
Right. What's the difference in the sense that you mentioned communion? Can you yourselves, as lay ministry people, can you give communion, or is it something
usually you have to have permission of the presbytery to lead communion. I have that permission because I did a course on leadership of the Eucharist and baptism.
Yes.
And having successfully completed that course, I was given permission to do that. That permission only goes as long as a minister is in settlement with the congregation.
Yes.
Now, as our minister has moved on from our church, I had to get that permission ratified by the presbytery.
Yes.
And it was. So on the first Sunday, I lead communion in the worship service, and on the third Sunday, our visiting minister leads the worship and the communion.
That's so that then this is a distinction between religions, but clearly the communion that you give is different to what, say, the High Anglican Church or the Catholic Church does. Is that right? Is it sort of...
I haven't really been to one of their services to know.
That's a fair answer. It's a fair answer.
But I think the elements are the same. It's a celebration of what Jesus did with his disciples in the upstairs room before his crucifixion, the Passover, and celebrating Jesus' resurrection and the life that he gives to us in giving us this liturgy.
Yes.
And there is a Uniting in Worship pew book that people can follow the liturgy on.
Right.
And a leader's book that has a little more detail in it that I would use. But I also use other approved liturgies from the Iona community in Scotland.
Yes.
But those liturgies have been given to me as ones that are acceptable for me to use.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned that the congregations, are they shrinking constantly, or do they pulsate?
Well, we've got 3 new members this year, but generally our congregation at Ferntree Gully varies between about 15 to 25, so we're quite small.
Yes.
There are smaller, but mainly in the country.
Yes. Yeah.
But we were one of the first congregations to become a lay ministry congregation in the urban area.
Right.
Some people still think Ferntree Gully is a country town, but it's a suburb now.
It's grown a bit now, hasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into to the interface between, say, yourself and the parishioners? Is there do they ring you for advice on things?
Well, I'm also an elder of the church, and the church council is composed of elders and ordinary council members who elders are more pastoral care and worship, and the church council members are more administration side. Okay. But with a lay ministry, there's a very much a crossing over and joint working. It used to be Elders Council and Parish Council.
Yes.
Elders Council was the pastoral care and worship and assisting the minister. Parish Council was administration.
Yes.
Buildings, finance, money. Now it's one church council and we work together where, you can't separate the building and the finances from what you're doing in worship.
At that level.
Yeah.
No, that's right. It's quite interesting to watch that evolution. When in '77, when you started amalgamating it, how big was the combined congregation at that point? Have you got any idea how big it was?
40
okay.
to 50, I think.
Okay. So overall, it's not a massive shrinking. It's sort of a bit of a shrink, but not.
Well, the whole emphasis has changed. It used to be the minister was the head of the church, and if the minister decided they wanted to go in this sort of direction, they got the support of the church council, the elders, right. The parish council, and worked that way. Now it's more a partnership.
Partnership. It's a partnership between us and time.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Spirit of Life. And we're speaking to Tina Sleeman. And Tina is the chairperson of the Church Council for the Uniting Church, Ferntree Gully. Tina, before you referred to your role as being part of pastoral care as part of your role, what does that look like with your church, with 25 or 30 parishioners? What does pastoral care look like?
Pastoral care, well, first off, I am contact person at the end of the phone, that whenever someone rings the church for help, if there's no one in the office, it is transferred to my home. Right. So that I have an answering machine. Hopefully I remember to turn it on, and then I get back to people, and I'll either contact the person, if they're a member of the church, that person's elder. Each elder has a number of people in their immediate care, and they keep in contact either by phone, visiting, see if they live nearby, seeing them at their homes or at the church. And basically pastoral care is offering support, be it spiritual or practical, physical, wherever it's needed. We try and stand beside that person and help them either, as I said, in spiritual journey, being part of the congregation, welcoming and assisting them and supporting them.
And without going into specific detail and naming people and events, what are the sorts of things that, as a pastoral carer, people might come to you about? Is it marital situations or religious interpretations? What would they ask you about?
Generally, I think it's not marital. Perish the thought that I tell them what to do. No more. It's spiritual. In it might be prayer. They want me to pray with them.
Yes.
It might be they want information on some aspect of the faith.
Yes.
At the moment, I'm talking with a young woman who wants to be confirmed.
Yes.
So we're having conversations after church, usually. We're exploring the Christian faith and what it means to be confirmed. Yes. And so that's one aspect I see of spiritual guidance. Yes. And we have a library that we can refer people to books to read on various subjects. And the if it's something practical like accommodation, we unfortunately don't have accommodation that we can supply, but we'll try and put them in touch with organisations within the church or real estate agents, whatever, where they can seek help. We try not to leave them floundering on their own.
Yes, yes.
Stand beside them.
So you're present to them, yes. And just further explanation of that is Does the Uniting Church, like somebody's dying or has died, do the relatives come to you and ask you to come?
Yes, I've had that happen, and I've been and said prayers to people who've been dying at the Glengolan nursing home.
Right.
And I've been with the minister, usually, visited families to arrange funerals.
Right.
And there's about 3 occasions where I have conducted a funeral when a minister was not available, or the family, because of our association together in the church, wanted a lay person to do it. And as a lay ministry congregation, they're used to seeing lay people in ministry roles.
Yes, with that lay person in the ministry role, do you wear anything to distinguish you at the time of services? Do you wear a stole or anything like that?
I am entitled to wear a blue stole with the Uniting Church logo on it, but generally I don't.
You don't?
My own personal preference is that I am a member of the congregation in a leadership role, but I want to emphasise our partnership in the journey together rather than set myself apart. I don't see that as part of my role to set myself apart by dressing differently.
Yes, and that's an interesting perspective. Is that a general thing with the Uniting Church, that the lay ministry, or even the ministry themselves, do they wear
ministers of the word usually wear an alb, a white alb, and they'll have different coloured stoles for different liturgical times of the year.
Okay. Yes.
So Pentecost would be a red stole, Advent and Easter could be purple, Easter Day be white. Funerals is generally white or red. Green is Pentecost to Advent, or ordinary time, that's sometimes called.
Yes, that's right. I can never get used to that ordinary time.
Nothing's ordinary.
No, it certainly is not. No, and time certainly isn't ordinary for us either, because we've actually come to the end of this program, and I'd ask you, would you come back and we can speak further about your experience with the Uniting Church?
Happy to.
Thank you very much, Tina. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, and we'll be speaking to Tina about more of her personal experience of the Uniting Church and some of the work that the Uniting Church does in the community at large.